The director of Train to Busan and the Netflix series Hellbound dives once again into the spiritual realm with revelations. So get ready for the rapture! A pastor and a detective, driven by their beliefs and pursuing their own truths, become involved in a missing person case, with the pastor believing it is his divine mission and the detective haunted by visions of her dead sister. This is a strange thriller, and true to the name, this is heavily tied to religious beliefs, which then become entangled with obsession, guilt, and zealotry. And the story follows a pastor who believes he is doing God's work by pursuing a man that he believes is responsible for the disappearance of a young girl that attends the pastor's church. Now, very quickly, we get to watch how the mind can become tricked and even corrupted by intense beliefs, allowing certain people to know something just on a feeling or an intuition. Now, also investigating the missing girl case is a detective who has a tortured past and also ties to the man the pastor suspects of the kidnapping. Now, the story spends a lot less time on the detective for the first 2/3-ish of the movie, where we are deep into the pastor's thoughts and his behaviors. What we watch him do, it's a great metaphor for how some organized religions affect people, compelling them to feel guilty or responsible, even if they're not. And what I found most intriguing is the descent the pastor takes in his mental state. The harder he dives into his faith, whether praying, providing absolution, even repenting when nobody's around, we watch this deterioration begin. And not only in his emotional health, but also in his physical state. He becomes paranoid, but strangely without remorse. I mean, when the pastor makes a certain decision, he sets off this series of complications. And he's anxious about getting found out, but also instructed by God in his actions. I mean, it's both weird and curious because the behaviors seem to contradict each other. Now, from the detective's point of view, we also get to watch obsession play out that's mixed with large amounts of guilt. Now, she's got her own baggage that not only informs her decisions, but provides her own type of conflict when it comes to the suspect. And where the pastor was experiencing a moral dilemma, the detective does as well. But while they both share sentiments in one area, they are completely on opposite ends when it comes to justice. And the storytelling does a great job of showing us the struggle they both experience with outcomes that aren't necessarily where you'd expect them to land given the backgrounds. Now, from the mystery portion of this, the missing girl story is still present throughout the movie, but it does take a backseat at times because the pastor and his own drama are given much more prominence. One arc, which has to do with both his wife and a potential new gig at this large church, that works for religiosity and belief angles, but it doesn't contribute much to the mystery or pursuit. As one more avenue to showcase the intense fervor that the pastor has in his faith, which of course does inform the overarching narrative, but I think we still get enough examples throughout the film, so they're not really entirely necessary. And the same goes for the detective's father. There are a couple of brief scenes that help provide a bit more background on her, but the main reason we have this one particular dinner scene with the father works as a setup for something much later on. I mean, her background was already illustrated for us in palpable ways. Again, just adding time without increasing the context of the story. And despite these areas that made the film longer, I really didn't feel the 122-minute runtime. There's so much tension that's created thanks to the intensity of the pastor's devotion to his faith. And I love how because he is so blinded by his calling, he rides that line of good and evil. And I don't think this film leaves us with a gray area in relation to this, but it is a bit wild to watch the progression over the course of the story. There are some visuals within the movie that were creatively executed and supported the storytelling. Every time the pastor believes his calling is being affirmed, he sees some visions. And well, I think the first is probably the most stark image we see. Another that is shown within another pastor's office is just awesome. I mean, think of some of those old school pictures that you'd see at the mall, that if you stared long enough, you might see something. Here, first off, you don't have to stare very long, but the effect is just brilliant. And from a mystery perspective, the one thing this really has going for it is the idea of doubt. We can be shown all sorts of sketchy suspects, but we're not shown the actual action of the kidnapping. So everything that follows for the characters, it's based on speculation, at least on the pastor's part, and then through investigation of evidence by the detective. This doubt that is raised is what helps to keep some of the mystique, but it's also kind of the secondary point for the story. Who the perpetrator is or what happened to the girl take a back seat to watching how the case affects the two protagonists. That being said, I do appreciate that the film also gives us some concrete answers, and through that, creates some anxious urgency, which is necessary because after a certain reveal and then the following actions, the story could end, but it would be unsatisfying to not get to the other conclusion. And again, this is a strange sort of storytelling. The plot starts out to be focused on a kidnapping, but then morphs to look at how someone's beliefs can have a profound effect on their actions. But then once that is seen to its resolution, we go back to focusing more intently on the original arc we began with. Now, I didn't mind this approach, but it did feel at times like the writing had sort of lost its way, kind of like it had ADHD and then got distracted. Then just followed this new line of thinking because it was engaging and flashy, only then to remember that there's also another point to the plot. I mean, I get it. My brain does that often, right? Does yours? Well, there's not much action within this movie, but a few scenes do create some impressive energy. And one fight scene in particular is a one-shot that lasts for several minutes. The approach drastically increases the dread thanks to the combo of camera movements and the slow and scheming moves of the characters. And this is a patiently building sequence that becomes explosive and immersive and might actually surprise you with some of the outcomes. I was initially a little disappointed in the mystery aspect of this, but then really began to appreciate the deep dive into examining how belief systems can corrupt and manipulate thoughts and what that leads people to do. This ends up providing the majority of the suspense and drama within the story, creating characters who are simple but very complex thanks to internal contradictions and concessions they're willing to make. The imagery is impressive and haunting, allowing us to peer into the mind of a zealot to witness how fervently they believe in their calling. While the mystery aspect can become secondary to the thrills of pursuit, the story continues to increase stressful dread before arriving at its resolutions. There's no sex or nudity, a lot of profanity, and some gnarly violence. I give Revelations 4 out of 5 couches. So are there any movies that you love that focus on beliefs or obsessions? I mean, my first thought goes to Hereditary, but I remember enjoying First Reformed when I saw it. Let me know yours, though, in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.